Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Summers, and welcome to the audio edition of Mind, Body, Soul, a show about your mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. Well, I'm here with a very good friend of mine, Tom Clift, and we're going to talk about resolutions. As we get into a new year, we look at resolutions and how we can make ourselves better. So I wanted to bring Tom along because he has a very different and unique approach to resolutions. So, Tom, give me your views on resolutions.
Well, Gary, to be honest with you, I'm not a big resolution fan. Resolutions are things that in the back of your head you know you need to do or change, but they're like flying birds. They're gone in as quickly as you can think of them. So, I prefer to think of it as goals, and I do make those written down so that I can see them every day, and then I'm constantly reminded of what change I need to make.
So, Tom, just give me an example of like a typical goal that you would set for yourself.
Well, Gary, well, first of all, I write down my goals. Some are personal goals, some are business goals. But the number one goal, believe it or not, that I write down each year, and it never changes, is to say or do something nice to someone every single day. And having it written down reminds me to do it. And I look for opportunities to do that to other people because there's nothing nicer than you receive a compliment from somebody.
It's interesting, Tom. So just think about what Tom just said. He said he doesn't have really resolutions, he has goals, which, and you can interpret them different ways. But I think the most important thing that Tom said was, he writes them down. And that's probably the most critical part of goal setting. First of all, is to have them, to get excited about them, but even more importantly, to write them down. So let's talk about resolutions or goals, whatever you want to call them. Is defined as a commitment to do something. A motivation to change is to reduce the inevitability of a regret. And I thought we would spend some time on this subject.
Well, resolutions and goals and so forth also highlight regrets. A lot of people have regrets because they didn't follow through on what they said or wanted to do, and they let excuses get in the way. So, yeah, regrets can be a very detrimental thing to your well-being mentally and physically.
Regret. It seems to be a fact of life. The one that got away, the job you didn't take, the fight you wish you hadn't had, the choice of the wrong school, the investment you didn't make, the money you didn't save, the move you wish you'd made, and on and on and on and on. That's the predictability of life. There will definitely be something along the way you will wish you'd done differently. Regrets can be big, choosing the wrong career, or small, picking a dress for the office party you really don't feel good in. They can occur daily, or they can have overarching ones that just seem to color everything you do.
Regrets, and I can't speak for everyone, but I know a lot of people regrets are heavy on their mind, and they think about them a lot, and it becomes sometimes with some people it becomes the focus of their life, and unfortunately that's probably not necessarily a good thing either.
Regret on its own is not a bad thing. In fact, it can spur us to action. The parent who has been working too much and might be preoccupied around the children might happen to see an ad or a parent playing in a carefree manner at the playground with their similar age child. This parent might feel a twinge of regret for not focusing on their own child more, and may then actually spend more time with their child. People who get terminal diagnoses may regret time wasted and realize that every second is precious and resolve to enjoy each and every moment they have left. Someone who regrets choosing a particular career path may find themselves approaching retirement and resolve to quit and pursue the career of their dreams. I actually had a guy told me he was 50 years old and he was in a career for 25 years and he wasn't happy, and he just quit his job and went back to school, which I really, I don't think I'd be able to do that, but I really admired him, and he said it was the best decision he ever made in his life. The examples of people who turned something around, tried something new, or charted a new course because regret motivated them are endless.
Yeah, I think like regrets can cause you to take one of two directions. One is that it gives you a shake up and you realize, okay, you know what, if I'm going to make something or I want to be happier than I am, then I'm going to have to make some kind of change that is going to put me outside my comfort zone. The other type of regret is when you dwell on it and don't do anything about it, and that causes great harm to you as a person. Um, and so I think that, you know, you need to focus on what's positive. And I know it's easy for me to say that, you know, you should quit your job or you should make this change in your lifestyle, which is never an easy thing to do. It's never easy. And that's why I guess most people often don't do it, because it's way more uncomfortable than they want to be.
Yes, regret sometimes becomes something more like an albatross. Too many regrets can sometimes materialize into an overall feeling of being wrong or bad. I never seem to make the right decisions. I always choose the wrong thing for me. Or regret may cause paralysis because you mourn what you could have or should have done and can seem to make a better decision going forward. And we're going to talk about that in a future show about regrets and how we always seem to tend to look behind, to look and focus on what went wrong.
Yeah, regrets is like driving a car and constantly looking through the rear view mirror, continually dwelling on the past. And that doesn't get you anywhere because, first of all, not a safe thing to do and look in the rear view mirror all the time, is it? So, you know, not a good thing for you either to be constantly looking back at what happened in your life.
Absolutely. And not only do you not enjoy the scenery as you pass it, but it's dangerous to drive without looking ahead and being present to what's beside and in front of you. If regret has become debilitating for you and is not spurring you to improve, but rather feels like that small mirror that you were just talking about, you are constantly checking behind you, maybe it's time to let go of the regrettable experiences and move on to something new. While we can learn from any mistake, the only thing any human being has to work with is their present and hopefully future state. The present is where the action really is, and being present to where you are now and resolving to make better decisions going forward.
Yes, Gary, you know, some things that have happened in your past you may have had some control over. However, there are lots of people who grew up in circumstances that were beyond their control and have had, you know, serious incidents happen to them in the past, traumatic events that have happened to them. Those kinds of things you can't fix and you can't go back and change. So, like you said, you need to really focus on what's happening now and realize things that were your fault that you could change, and there are things that have happened to you that are not your fault and you have no control over. So regretting them, there's nothing regret's going to do to change that for you.
And social psychologists tell us in order for us to be truly happy, we have to spend 85% of our time in the present moment. 85% of our time in the present moment. But how many of us look backward and beat ourselves up over a decision we made? Or we look forward and we worry about something that may happen to us. Red Skelton said, there's 1,000 yesterdays and even more. There might be a tomorrow, but there's always a today. So when we can really focus, and it's important to plan, it's important to look forward, but we really need to spend our time and focus on what can we do now to make our life better.
You know, it's easy for me to say or to dictate that, you know, you shouldn't be looking back and so forth like that. But unfortunately, you know, sometimes our minds wander and we keep thinking about what may have happened, or we may be thinking about what's happening in the future. So staying present all the time is a very difficult thing to do and quite understandable.
Right. And when you tend to continue looking back, you haven't learned from that. You're still beating yourself up over it. And looking back is okay, but it's really, really important to learn from that. And if you find yourself continuing looking back and beating yourself up over it, you haven't learned from that experience. So go back, learn, figure out what you can do better, figure out how you can make your life better, and just leave it. It's like someone said, you know, you can't walk in last year's snow and you can't shovel it either. So we need to move on because this year's snow is here. So if you've become locked, like you said, in the rearview mirror, how do you tear your attention away? Well, we have a trinity of selves. We have our actual self, which is who we are, you know, a flawed human being. We have our ought self, the one who meets all expectations of social role, the need to be accepted. So it's our ought to self. You know, you have to act a certain way in public. You have to do certain things. You have to do your things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. And then you have your ideal self, the most fulfilled self, your full potential. Regrets of action related to your ought self.
So Gary, you said ought, as in O-U-G-H-T, as if should have. Is that what you meant?
Okay.
Ought, right. Right. Thanks for clarifying that. So, regrets of action related to your ought self. For instance, why did I say or do that? I am so stupid. I should have known better. There are regrets of inaction related to your ideal self. If I had my time back, I would have done something differently. So, in a study, 70% of people said the biggest regret were related to an action not taken that would have brought them closer to a goal for their ideal self. And someone said, well, I'd rather regret the things I did rather than the things I didn't do. And that supports this study. So they're saying 70% of regrets are from people saying that I wish I had done this that would have brought me closer to your goal. Life is about being the best you can be by playing the cards you're dealt the best way you know how. So think about that statement. Life is about being the best you can be by playing the cards you were dealt the best way you know how. So do you have a bucket list? Do you have a bucket list?
Yes, certainly. I would imagine most people have a bucket list. There's lots of things that we all aspire to do at some point.
Again, I'll ask our listeners, what is your purpose? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? How can you reinvent yourself every day? I look for things that I can do to get excited about. I really do. And one of the things I wanted to do was a radio show. So it's about the difference between existing and living and having a vision board. You know, one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself is having a vision board.
So Gary, just to clarify for your listeners, vision board is something you have on your wall with things that you may desire. For example, it could be that new house you wanted to get, or that new sports car you wanted to get, or that holiday you wanted to take. When you have them all posted on a board where you see it every day, you're constantly reminded of the things that you need to work towards.
And I think one of the reasons for regret is the need for instant gratification because of ill-conceived goals. We teach our kids to put out their hands and we will give them whatever we want.
So we're talking about resolutions, regrets, doable goals. So Gary, just expand a little bit on what you mean by doable goals.
So 4 things really. And the first thing is, do you believe you can achieve it? That's the key thing. Because you don't want to set a goal so high that there's no way you can achieve it. You don't want to set it so low that you don't step outside your comfort zone, but you have to really, truly believe that you can achieve this goal. The second thing is, can you see it? Anytime I have people come into my office, the first thing I ask them is, do you actually believe that you can achieve that goal? Because I get a lot of people say to me, Gary, I'd like to lose 20 pounds, but I can't. I say, have you ever accidentally eaten anything? So, can you see yourself doing it? The third thing is getting excited about it. I keep hammering this home is if you can't get excited about a goal that you're going to do, you figure out something else because you're either going to quit halfway or just going to do a half bit of a job out of it. But the fourth most important is to write it down. Because social psychologists tell us when you write something down and put it to paper, you're committed to it. And when you become committed to it, commitment is one of the 6 biggest influencers in the world. So delayed gratification is what I'm talking about. Delayed gratification is a habit where you forego short-term pleasure in order to gain significant long-term future rewards. In other words, you ward off short-term temptations that might distract you from your long-term goals and instead focus on what you need to do to achieve your desired long-term outcomes.
So Gary, short-term pain and long-term gain are all much more effective when you act on it immediately. And I'm going to give you an example. Like when I go to a conference or a convention or something like that, I've seen lots of people come out of that extremely excited, me included. There was a golden nugget there somewhere that I said, oh, that will work really well. And unfortunately, if you don't do something about it immediately, 3 days later, as excited as you were and as passionate you were about it, it's gone. So I do this, for me, it works for me. I can't say it's going to work for you, but for me it works. As soon as I catch that nugget, I immediately put into writing a step-by-step process. It might be only 2 steps or 3 steps or maybe 4, but I put a process in place as to what I need to do to get myself started on that, and that way it certainly helps me achieve it. If I let it go 2 or 3 days, it's gone and you forget about it.
That's what people do, is that instant gratification is short-term gain, right? But instead it's short-term pain for long-term gain. Getting into the habit of delayed gratification. And that gives you more control over your life, your decisions, and your actions. Furthermore, it helps you value and appreciate hard work and effort. Yes, things are tough right now, but the pain you experience is a necessary part of the process to help you achieve your long-term goals. The act of delaying gratification. And this is what social psychologists tells us. It helps to build your mind, shape your character, build your self-esteem and willpower, reinforces self-discipline, teaches you about the values of patience. It's the one habit that determines how successful you will become and how much you will ultimately achieve.
Yeah, Gary, sometimes, I know this is really weird, but I could be in the middle of something or having a nap or even asleep, and an idea pops into my head, and I keep a little sticky pad next to my bed with a pen, and I'll write down that idea right away, because I know that if I delay it, I'll probably forget about the idea and wish I hadn't.
See, Tom, no, that's not weird. That's an exactly perfect example of delayed gratification. The instant gratification would be you just turn over and you go back to sleep. But the delayed gratification is that was something important and you needed to do it right away. So when I do my Kids and Drugs program, this is one of the big aspects that I talk to parents about, is that get your kids to work for what they achieve. I told stories about my daughter when I just wouldn't give her money. I'd make her work for everything that she wanted. But we tend to want to make life easier for our kids, and we tend to make it too easy. So kids grow up entitled, thinking that, well, I don't have to work. I haven't had to work in my whole life. So know what you want, not what you don't want. Identify obstacles that could get in your way. So if you want to lose some weight, purge your pantry of pastries, of chocolate. Purging your pantry is a good idea, because it's a lot easier to go to the pantry to get that chocolate bar than it is to get in your car and drive to the store to buy a chocolate bar. If you're going to lose weight, don't spend 15 minutes driving around the parking lot looking for a closer place to park. Park at the end of the parking lot and walk to work. Don't wait 10 minutes for the elevator. Walk up the stairs. Build a support network, someone who can help, a walking buddy, a workout buddy. Set boundaries, what is acceptable and what is not, and develop a reward system.
Actually, Gary, can I just interject a little bit about what you said about accountability? I think that's an absolutely fabulous idea. When you know somebody is depending on you, or that someone's going to check to see if you accomplish what you said you were going to do, the pressure becomes huge. Peer pressure works with everything. And you know that, let's just say, for example, you were going to go running or whatever.
Well, I did with my buddy Roger Barber. We were accountable to each other Monday to Friday. Every lunchtime, we knew we had to count on each other.
And you would not miss that no matter what, because you didn't want to disappoint him.
Absolutely.
And I bet he never missed because he didn't want to disappoint you. So putting yourself out there and getting somebody who has a similar interest, and each of you keep each other accountable, the chances of success increase exponentially.
So I know this guy who would reward himself with fish and chips every time he'd finish a project. And I'd say, well, when would you finish? He said 2 or 3 times a week. I said, well, a reward system is something that's going to help you. And listen, fish and chips, I love it. Absolutely, but not 2 or 3 times a week. I just don't think that's in a healthy lifestyle. So a reward system is you break down a huge goal. If you want to lose, if it's 20 pounds, then every 5 pounds reward yourself. So break those down into doable goals.
I really like what you just said about breaking it down into smaller components. Unfortunately, lots of people have great big dreams and so forth, but that's just the point. They seem so big and so ominous, they don't know where to start, or they think it becomes very unattainable. Whereas if you break it down into smaller components, a small part looks doable, and then you do the next small part and the next small part. It's like someone writing a book. They're not going to, when you look at writing a book as ominous, it would be. But if you think about, let's just do 1 page at a time, that doesn't seem so ominous at all.
And that's what happens with the instant gratification, is because what you're looking at is so big and it seems so ominous that you just fall off the wagon and you are tempted to just break it because it just seems like it's something that you'll never ever be able to attain?
I'm just going to use what we just said. I'm going to just give you a personal example of something that I did. Started 2 years ago. When COVID started, I decided and I realized that I had not in very good shape and condition-wise hadn't done anything in a while. But it also seemed really hard to do a 40-minute workout and continue with that. So I just started off with, I actually started off with 2 minutes on the treadmill. I figured 2 minutes, I last 2 minutes no matter what. And, and I continued on, and each week, after doing 2 minutes for all week, once a day, and then I continued on. And now, I do 45 minutes a day, and it seems easy now, but it sure seemed like hell when I thought about doing 45 minutes in the beginning.
And the great quote that I heard many years ago is, every journey begins with a single step.
Exactly.
So no matter how much you tried to discipline yourself and no matter how much you focused on your long-term objectives, you just couldn't resist. I'm the same way. We're all human beings getting caught up in that instant gratification trap. And what's worse, you'll probably have no idea how to dig yourself out of it.
Yes, and I'm going to attest to the fact that we're all human. And each of us at some point beats ourselves up because we're not achieving as quickly as we'd like to. You're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat, no matter what it is they're trying to do.
Yes, and you go to a party, Christmas coming up and everything, and you did so well over the last couple of months, and you see a box of chocolates, and you take one chocolate and you eat it, and you go, my diet is ruined, and you eat the whole box. So you define 2 months of great work with 5 seconds of indiscretion, and then you beat yourself up over it, and you eat the whole box of chocolates. So social psychologists tell us that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to meet our goals all the time. So if you do fall off track, just say, I'm not going to allow 5 seconds of indiscretion to ruin that 2 months of great work. So you get right back on track again. Here's a simple 4-step process. If you find yourself being drawn into that instant gratification trap, distract yourself. Do something else. Get up, go for a walk, go outside, do something. Just distract yourself, because the more you focus on that chocolate bar, the more you focus on those carbohydrates that are in the cupboard that you shouldn't have bought in the first place. So distract yourself. Hey, listen, I do the same thing too. That's why my wife and I don't buy, because it wouldn't be in the house. My self-discipline is terrible. Distract yourself. Do something else. Focus on your big picture. Think about what your long-term goals are. Eliminate temptations, as I said before. Purge your cupboard and learn from your experience. Okay, so you fell off the wagon. You ate a chocolate. Big deal. You're human. Get back on the track. I have a question for you. Do you believe that your life and long-term goals are more important than the momentary temptations that are thrown your way?
Yes, of course, Gary. I believe that. Anyone that's achieved any levels of success, whatever that might be, stuck to their goals. But it is so easy to beat yourself up. You just got to keep reminding yourself, it's only a minor indiscretion, and I'm going to continue on.
Of course, if you honestly believe that, and you do, then you will have no trouble developing the habit of delayed gratification. However, if you don't quite believe this, then you will continue to experience fleeting moments of pleasure. Unfortunately, in the end, you won't be satisfied. You'll not be happy. You'll probably not be fulfilled. At the end, your life will be nothing more than regrets and unfulfilled expectations. And I know I'm painting a really dull picture and a dark picture of this, but I think it's about, not beating ourselves up over the decisions we made, not falling into allowing 5 seconds of indiscretion to ruin what we did. Life isn't easy, but not because of what happens to us. It's about the decisions we make. And when we make the right decisions, life can be easy. It's our decisions that complicate life.
Hey, Gary, just you mentioned about habits. So in your research or what you've read, how long does it take normally to change a habit?
And we talked about this several months ago, and so I did some research because I was kind of I thought it was a longer than that. So here's the research. Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s, and he began noticing a strange pattern among his patients. Someone who came in for a nose job, who had to have a limb amputated, and he said that For someone to get used to a new nose or phantom limb pain, because if you have an amputation, you tend to have phantom pain even though the limb is gone. He said it took a minimum of 21 days before adjusting to a new situation. Maltz wrote about his observations, not the facts, and that's when the problem started.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Like, 21 days seems to be a standard of some sort anyway for changing a habit or maybe even developing a new one.
Yes, and you see people with New Year's resolutions joining a gym, and you'll see them going for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you don't see them after that. So if it was true that it took 21 days to change a habit, then people, all they would have to do is to go to the gym for 21 days, and now it becomes a brand new habit. Like Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, they all forgot that he said a minimum of 21 days and shortened it to it takes 21 days to form a new habit. And that's how society started spreading the common myth that it takes 21 days to form a new habit, or 30 days, or some other magic number. It's remarkable how often these timelines are quoted as statistical facts. Dangerous lesson, in fact. If enough people say something enough times, then everyone else starts to believe it. It makes sense why the 21-day myth would spread. It's easy to understand. The time frame is short enough to be inspiring, but long enough to be believable. And who wouldn't like the idea of changing your life in 3 weeks? Wouldn't you like to think that you could change your life in 3 weeks?
So 21 days is not a concrete fact. So generally speaking, how long does it take to break a bad habit or develop a good one?
I guess we can fool ourselves and we can delude ourselves into thinking that all we need to do is do something for 3 weeks and we're all of a sudden changed people. But life doesn't work that way. It doesn't. You can spend months and months and months practicing a flawed golf swing, and all you'll do is become an expert at a flawed golf swing. So when you continue to do the wrong things, or when you continue to think that it just takes 21 days to change a habit, that's where we start to get off on the wrong foot. Because once 21 days are passed and we're still uncomfortable with doing something, we stop. We stop doing it after 21 days instead of giving it time. So it has to become a lifestyle change. It has to become part of your everyday life. So Philippa Lally is a health psychology researcher at University College in London, England. In a study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology, Lally and her research team decided to figure out just how long it actually takes to form a habit. The study examined the habits of 96 people over a 12-week period and longer. Each person chose one new habit for the 12 weeks and reported each day on whether or not they did the behavior or how automatic the behavior felt. Some people choose something simple like drinking a bottle of water with lunch. Others choose something more difficult like running for 15 minutes before dinner. At the end of the 12 weeks, the research analyzed the data to determine how long it took each person to go from starting a new behavior to automatically doing it. The answer? On average, it took more than 2 months before a new behavior becomes automatic. 66 days to be exact. And how long it takes a new habit to form can vary widely depending on the behavior of the person and the circumstances. In Lally's study, it took anywhere from 18 days to 254 days for people to form a new habit. In other words, if you want to set your expectations appropriately, the truth is that it will probably take you anywhere from 2 months to 8 months to build a new behavior into your life, not 21 days. So that's no different than seeing the infomercials on TV that say 6-second abs or we can melt weight off your stomach. We talked about some of this in our fitness segment. So interestingly, the researchers also found, and this is important, missing one opportunity to perform the behavior did not materially affect the habit formation process. In other words, it doesn't matter if you mess up every now and then. Building better habits is not an all or nothing process. So that's when I talked about taking that chocolate, or in your case, walking to the cupboard to get your carbohydrate fix. As long as you don't do it every single time. Falling off the wagon is okay, and research shows that you don't have to be perfect all the time to achieve your goal. But first, there is no reason to get down on yourself if you try something for a few weeks and it doesn't become a habit. It's supposed to take longer than that. There's no need to judge yourself if you can't master a behavior in 21 short days. Learn to love your 10 years of silence. Embrace the long, slow walk to greatness, and focus on putting in your reps and putting in the time.
Yeah, so just keep in mind we're human. Don't aim for perfection. Slip up here now and then. It's not going to make any difference. You can still continue to form your habit as long as you stick to it.
Right, so you focus on the journey, not the destination. Yes, second, you don't have to be perfect. Making a mistake once or twice has no measurable impact on your long-term habits. That is why you should treat failure like a scientist. Give yourself permission to make mistakes and develop strategies for getting back on track quickly.
So why do we hate to make mistakes so much? Why is that such a pain?
Because the greatest human fear is failure. We're taught that failing is bad instead of being part of the process, right? So you did something wrong, so, boo-boo on you, right? We're going to do a 3-part series on beliefs and subconscious programming later on.
So Larry, how do you see, or what do you see as the solution to making this last?
Okay, good question. Embrace longer timelines that can help us realize that habits are a process and not an event. All of the 21-day hype can make it really easy to think, I'll just do this and I'll be done. But habits never work that way. If you have to embrace the process, you have to commit to the system. Understanding this from the beginning makes it easier to manage your expectations and commit to making small, incremental improvements rather than pressuring yourself into thinking that you have to do it all at once. How long it takes to form a particular habit doesn't really matter that much. Whether it takes 50 days or 500 days, you have to put in the work either way. The only way to get to day 500 is to start with day 1. So forget about the number and focus on doing the work, and more importantly, getting excited about the end result and how your life will be better. I've heard the expression, the best time to start something was yesterday. The second best time to start something
is today.
Exactly. That's it for this week, everybody. I'm Gary Summers. I'll be back next week with another interesting guest. Bye-bye for now.